All right. So hello, everyone. My name's Joe Glines, and I'm here out of Dallas, and we're getting ready to start our AutoHotkey webinar. And my colleague, Jackie, Jackie, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hello, I'm Jack, and yeah, I'm here together with Joe Glines one more time. Yeah, so happy to be here and to talk about AutoHotkey one more time.
And so I think a lot of you guys have attended these, but of course people watch these later. So neither of us are programmers. We don't come back from a programming background, but we've been using AutoHotkey for a long time. I did a search the other day, and I found a file on my computer from 2005 for AutoHotkey. And so I think I actually can say I've been using it since 2005. But the first, I mean, except for the last, like, what is it now, 5 years? Yeah, about that. I was really just using hotkeys and hot strings, right? No object-oriented stuff, and it does so much more. I mean, I'm so glad I used it back then, but the stuff I do with it now is just insane compared to what I used to use it for.
Yeah, I think I switched my first window back in 12 or something like that, where all it actually did was just move a value from one window to the other, switching back and forth. So yeah, that was my first very simple script.
Cool. So and this webinar is going to be on both copying and moving and deleting files, and then also creating and editing and saving files and the content of them. And so we had 75 registrants. Of course, not everyone shows up, and we encourage people just to register, because then you get an email with the resources and links after. Right now, because there's so many people, right, if we weren't all muted, it would sound like a madhouse. I was actually on a call the other day where they had like 3 or 4 people, and everyone, it was just really a cluster because everyone kept trying to overtalk each other. And so this is how we control that. Is the first hour, Jackie and I will go through our deck. There's a way you can raise your hand, or you can just, in the chat, you can ask a question. And so just feel free to ask questions there, or if your question is so complex that you'd rather ask it, I can unmute your mic if you want, and then you can ask it. But for the first hour, we have it set up where you can't unmute yourself, and it's not because we love hearing ourselves talk. It's just because it would be chaos. So without further ado, we're going to get started off here. This first one, and it's kind of ironic, is that I did test this, but this is a script that I use like when I used to work in the corporate world, and I could never walk away from my computer without using like the Windows key and hit L to lock it. And of course, then I'd come back and have this crazy, like, 8-character password that would have, lowercase, uppercase, numbers, letters, special characters, and have to type it in every time. And it really annoyed me. So I wrote a program that what it does is when I hit it, and this is what's funny, is I could hit it right now, but you guys won't see anything. But what it does is it kills the power feed to all of my monitors, and it also blocks any key combination from being pressed, except for certain ones that I have opened up. And let me show you the code, but I really can't demonstrate it. This is hold on, here we go. Here's my locker code. So it first off, just of course, make sure there's only one instance of it. And this gives it a little bit of a sleep. So basically I can let my fingers off the keyboard. Otherwise it tracks out and never goes into the sleep. But then it jumps into a little set timer here every quarter of a second, and goes and sends the sleep. This is the sleep command. This 2 here tells it to Windows to kill the power to all your monitors, and basically just sits in this loop and keeps looping over it until I hit the apps key, and in my case U. Then it will turn that off and it exits the app. But the other thing I do is, you can see here, I set up hotkeys that don't point to anything. And so all of these keys are basically locked, right? Someone can sit here on my keyboard and hit them, and it won't actually do anything. And so for all in effect, it is locked. My computer's locked. I actually turned off a couple, like the media, because sometimes I'll have music on, and I wanted to be able to pause the music even if the window if my screen was locked up. And I can turn I can mute it, I can pause it, and I can turn the music up and down. But this is how it works. I'll make it available. Everything we do in this, we have available after the webinar. We also record the webinar. It'll be on YouTube. I see Dr. Zoor's question of block input, but I don't want people even seeing my screen, is what it boiled down to, right? Is mine kills it? Because even if I would literally get a ticket if my screen was up and I was not near my computer and they waited for more than a minute, I would literally get a ticket written and left on my computer, regardless of whether they could type anything or not. Well, yeah, I'm not going to try to change my theme, but I can zoom in a little. But anyway, we'll give you. I know these are hard to see. Don't get me wrong, but we'll share the code later on. Oh, instead of list the hotkeys. Oh, I don't know. Maybe that will work fine. I did this again. This was one of my first scripts, like a lifetime ago, and it works. And I've just never gone back and played with it. So anyway. Like I said, I demonstrate it, but you guys won't see anything because it doesn't kill my video card. It just kills the power to my monitors. So I would lose everything. Oh, and the other thing to point out is I have a hotkey that launches this script. And so my hotkey that launches it is in a separate one. I just launch it. And then this is the hotkey that will actually kill it, which is took me a while to think through because I didn't want something always running. But the other script will just run it, and it launches this one, which will then kill it. That make sense? Yeah, as long as I see your question, Wade, on notebooks too, as long as it's a Windows computer. The apps key, if you look down at your keyboard, to the right of your space bar, if you have one, there's an Alt key, and then there's this other key that looks like it almost looks like it has a small picture of a calculator on it, and then to the right of that one is the right control key. So to the right of your space bar, between the right Alt and the right control, is a key, and on a lot of keyboards it's the applications key is what it's actually called. However, some keyboards don't have it. They have do you remember, Jackie, is it the Alt Grav or something like that, or Grav?
Yeah, Alt GR, yeah, ground,
Alt,
yeah.
Okay. So not all keyboards have it. I purposely, because I use it. Let me pull up my main. This is my main AutoHotkey script, and I use it. Where are they? Apparently, I already passed them. Hold on. There we go. So see it. Oh, there we go. So see all these apps key and D and E and F and H and L. So it's another modifier key like Control or Shift or Windows. But I use it to launch programs, and since it's the apps key in my head, right, it helps me remember what it is. But yeah, it's just that key, and so I purposely buy keyboards to make sure they have it because I use it a lot.
Yeah, just saying, I'm falling in and out of audio, so
Okay.
Some things I hear and some things I don't. But yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have an apps key either. I simply have the Alt key R, the Windows key, and of course the menu key, and then the control key. So yeah, it's probably somewhere able to activate it somehow.
Yeah, Jean, I think you're right. It's also can be known as the context menu key because if you haven't tied it to anything, it will trigger your context menu. Mm-hmm. Which is what a really long time ago I used to use it for, a really, really long time ago. So anyway, it's not an amazing. It is one of by far the simplest scripts I've ever had, but boy, I use it all the time because the other thing I use it for is I'll be sitting here or I'll be in a meeting and my laptop is using energy powering my display, and nothing's going on, and so I can just hit a button, and it will kill the feed to the screen and just save my battery energy. It isn't that I wanted to lock it. It's just I want to save the energy.
Yeah.
All right. So that was that one. Let me go ahead and close that to simplify this. All right. And we'll get into the next one. All right. So here's the overall at a high level topic of we're dealing with files and folders. I'll send out the link. This hyperlink is a zip file that has every script that we review today in it. And so when you see it, actually, I'll try to remember to put it in the email so you have it, so you'll have them all as attachments. But it'll be on my webpage also where we have them and share them. And so we're going to cover moving, copying, deleting files and folders. And then, as I said, creating, editing files in the dreaded encoding, which confused me as all get. Still, I don't fully grasp it. I at least understand the concept, but I'm definitely no pro on it. All right. So to start off with just doing some file copy, move, delete. Now, a lot of this here, I don't beat me up too much. I literally copied and pasted from the AutoHotkey support because a lot of the stuff is very straightforward. And I took some of the more important, kind of interesting parts. Let me add a little extra spacing in here. But if you haven't used it already to copy files and to move files, file copy, you just put in the pattern you want and the destination, and then you put in whatever flag you're using, and it will copy a single folder or files. But if you want to do a lot of them, use file copy dir to copy the contents of the folder instead of all its files and subfolders. Let me show the first script here just to, I think it's a lot easier to talk to this. This is my first one, yes. So, and let me come over here. And so under files to manipulate, let's see here, we have, that's the path. So here's my script, right? We're going to first go sub to here, and we're going to call this line where we're going to copy this example1.txt into the subfolder right here. So let's make sure I'm going to get rid of that. Okay. And it's going to return. So let me launch my script. And now when I run it, actually, let's do it this way. All right, here we go. When I run it, there, I just copied that example1.txt from this folder here, right, into that subfolder. And this was the call. And here I've defined my path just because I was going to reuse it. And so I put it there. And then I just called it here and told it where to put it. Now, if I had wanted to do the same thing, but give it a different name. So let's say I want to put it in the same folder. So here I'm using the same folder twice, right? I'm copying it. I'm making a copy of it. And actually, let's better name this. There. Now, when I save this and reload it, I commented out. And now in here, let me go up one. So here you'll notice here's the example one. And when I run it, there, it just created the file in the same folder because this time I didn't tell it a subfolder. I just gave it a different name, right? So it's very simple, straightforward. And then this last one, and here I'm not going to run it, but it's basically the same thing, but I'm changing the extension, right? It's the exact same thing as this, but I'm just easily changing the extension I'm giving it.
Yeah, and if this script was placed in the same folder as the actual example1 text file,
yeah,
you wouldn't actually need to specify the path.
Right. That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. It assumes the local folder if you haven't given it the path to it. All right. And then, so let's go ahead and we're going to switch over now to the copy folders. And in this first one, let me see here. So we're going to copy this subfolder and we're going to place it into folder copy. And so in this one, I want to be, that's the subfolder. And so I think it's going to put it right here. Is that right?
It should, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I'm going to, oops, save it, reload it. Now when I run, actually, so here we have two files in there. Let's go back up. Now when I run it, so it created folder copy in the same subfolder, or sorry, same folder, and there's the contents.
Yeah.
And this next example, I did want to point out what I do like about this one, excuse the typo, is if you're trying to build a subfolder structure, if it doesn't exist, this command will automatically create it. And so, it's going to create. Oh, I didn't realize it. I'm sorry. I put in a create directory, and so this folder copy subfolder. So when I save this, reload it, and run it, and I should have it over here. So folder copy was it? I think I was in there. Oh no, yeah, here subfolder. So see all these subfolders? I didn't have to call that 4 different times. It just ran once, and I was able to create that subfolder with it.
Yeah, it's very easy and simple to use, and of course you need to know how file paths are formatted.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's very simple to use.
These other ones, they're very similar. The file delete, we're actually going to demonstrate that in a later script, but I'll cover that then. But we have the links here and stuff. We'll share them. Again, this is straight from the AutoHotkey support stuff. It's nothing, no rocket science on these. This next one, I don't use it that often, but it is an interesting functionality. And so let me come back to Studio. Oh, here. So the one thing I do want to put on here was this loop files. This files here, it's case sensitive. That's why I highlighted the red F. So make sure you do it exactly like that. And then you can, these are the main different modes. I think you can use numbers also in place of them, but I just put in the letters here. So if you want to copy the directories or the files and do recursive, right? That's what you'd put in. Anything between brackets is optional on any sort of a command in AutoHotkey. And then there are these, when you're, it retrieves the folders one at a time as it loops over them, and you can do different things to them. And then there's this list of all these special variables, right, that you can have access to inside that loop. So let me, actually the file's already open. Let me jump to it. Loop files and folders. Here we go. All right. So we're going to start off with this first one, and we're going to look at in the folder path and get all the text files, and we're going to do it recursively, and that's what this R is doing here. Oh, I need to exit out of the other script and launch this one.
I find it interesting that the loop files is actually case sensitive. That must be one of the only...
I didn't know there were any. Yeah. Yeah.
There's at least very few.
Yeah. And recursive, it means it keeps drilling down, right? Regardless of how many folders and subfolders, it'll automatically go beneath it and get everything and keep looping.
Yeah.
Which obviously you can understand why it's a great ability to have. It's also important to know it is there, because if you didn't want it and it's doing it, that could be really bad too.
Yeah.
So here, loop file. Oh, then we're going to put them. So, oh, you know what? I didn't have a mess. Oh, look at that. I didn't even have a return. That's why. That's, correct me if I'm wrong, and it's called a fall. A what? Fall.
A fall?
No, well, when I forgot to return, a fall through, I think that's called. I forgot to add a return in my sub loop.
You could probably call it a fall through, yeah. But yeah, it just continues the flow of the script, yeah.
Yeah.
So labels don't stop the script. So
that's right. Right. It just I think that's called a fall. Anyway, so it went in this directory, which I defined up here, files to manipulate, and got me all the text files recursively. And so it went and got them, and then I dumped it. This is in Studio. This is the debug window, but Maestri has built a function that allowed me to dump text to it, because in Sight I had that function for using the output window. And it's just nice because I don't have to build a GUI every time. I can just dump stuff to it. So here I got a list of, and notice here I did the full path, right? But this is one of those special, these variables here, right? So let's just play with it real quickly. Let's change this to a loop file name. So I'm gonna save this, reload it, and run it. Oh, and I Oh, I had this other one on. There we go. So notice how that changed is we don't have the full path, right? It's just the file name. And so that's how we're using these special variables inside that. And so let's go on to the next one. I think for most of you guys, this is pretty, you've done this, right? But here's a great example where we're going to get, what if I wanted to know the folder size of a given folder and all its contents? And so here we're going to jump down to folder size. We're going to get a list of all the files in my temp folder, and then it's going to start adding them. It loops over them to add them up, right? So each file starts adding them up, and then it finally presents you with a message box of saying, I have 5 megabytes in my temp folder under C:/temp. The loop folders, let's see here. So this one, D is telling it to loop the folders, and I didn't have the R in there, so it's not recursive. And let's see what the... so that gave me, under my C:/, I said, look there, give me all the folders, and so here are the folders under my C drive. This next one here was one I had written years and a lifetime ago, and it was just an example of what if I wanted to, look in certain places and delete file types of certain extensions. And so I first made a list of extensions. Actually, look at that. That's a CVR. I think it was supposed to be like that. Yeah, but it'll then loop over them, and I've defined them here, and then I start looping over these, and inside here it says, hey, if the file extension I'm looking at is in this list, and this is what it examines, I easily could have put those down here if I cared to, but this way, if I use them over and over outside the loop, they'd still be there. Then go ahead and delete it. If not, just stop. And then basically, when it's done, it'll break the loop. Otherwise, it would keep running forever because I don't have a counter on this. Let me see.
Shouldn't it only loop over them once?
Well, I would think so. However, when I ran it earlier, it kept running. And I had when I first, because like I said, I wrote this a long time ago, I commented these out and I was running it, and it kept running. And it didn't just say return, when I would check check it in here and see what it was doing, it was still doing something. Mm-hmm. I agree with you though. I mean, I'm happy. Let's take a test run here. So let's see, there's PNGs. Do I have PNG? Yeah, PNGs in here. Let's comment these out. Let me make sure I've got delete files. Yeah, it's running. Let me go back here. I'm going to run it. So it deleted some of the things, right? You saw the PNG files go away.
Yeah.
Now let's see what it's doing. So see this. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, it did. Now it stopped. Maybe when I did it, I didn't comment something out. Okay. So now I'm hitting F5 and it's just saying it's just sitting here, right? It got to the last return. So thank you, Jackie. I'm glad you had me double check that because it didn't make sense to me, but I don't know why I had that in there. So let's go ahead and drop it. There we go. And then the last one, and here I alluded to earlier, we were just starting, was I was demonstrating using a list view. And so here what we're going to do is I build a list view, and I actually changed the font size, it's a little bigger. I did manually create the headers for it. But here are the special variables. And now we're gonna look at the files in my temp folder, and we're going to dump them into a list view. This command here tells it to auto-size it. And now when I run it, so it just built a list of the files in my list view. Apparently, I should have done this before I deleted stuff. But list views to me are just amazingly simple, in that they're so powerful. It's a great way to display a lot of your data.
It still works. Um, so yeah, but hey, didn't you actually have text in your loop file list?
To delete?
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting that then there actually is text files.
Right. No, I agree. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe I stopped. No, I didn't stop it. Anyway, I'm not going to worry about it. It did. I mean, we saw the PNGs disappear.
We did.
Yeah. But all right. So we're halfway through. And I'm kind of going fast because we got a lot to cover. But that was basically showing the looping files and folders. And so let me exit out of that script. All right, now, all right, file encoding. Okay. So these different commands, need to know what you're encoding your file is built in. And as I was saying earlier, I at least grasp the concept, right, that your computer needs to understand what a A is and what a B is and what a C is. And different encodings will, be stored differently on your computer to tell, your program that that's an A. Can you better summarize it, Jackie?
No, I don't think I can. What I think I learned back in the day is that these UTFs are just very long lists of actual characters with a specific placement in with a specific index.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, the encoding actually just is a different list of characters. So if
Yes.
you, like me, use Unicode.
Uh-oh, he cut out. Yeah. He'll probably come back here. But
Maybe. Can you actually hear me? My computer keeps saying that I'm having a bad connection.
we hear you now.
But yeah, to me it seems like okay. That's the way I see it. It's just the way for the computer to know which characters which were.
A lookup table, basically, right?
You're not hearing me.
Yeah. And so
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, and so the one thing I'd say is, like, 20 years ago, maybe 30 years ago, ANSI was fine, right? It was like, most things were in English and it wasn't an issue. Nowadays, and there's so many other different types of characters these days, I use UTF-8 with everything and just say, then I don't have to, for the most part, I don't have to worry about anything. And so I try to set everything to UTF-8. And this number, actually, where I thought I had it on this page here, code page. Here we go. And this stupid. Let me pull it up to show you the lookup table, right? And the reason why. So see this 6501, right? That's UTF-8 or Unicode UTF-8. That's why for UTF-8 it's 6501. And then you could, of course, look up whatever other encoding you want and specify it. But honestly, like I said, if I were you, I would just stick with the file size. Granted, it makes, compared to ANSI files, it makes the files bigger because it takes more characters to save stuff. But file size is nothing compared to what it used to be. And so typically we have plenty of space. And so I would always default to UTF-8. The other thing, which I cheated on, is that most of these commands, you can either use CP 6501 or 65001, excuse me, or the word UTF-8. You could put this in there in that place, but not all of them do. And so I wanted to keep it simple and just leave it as put in this, or at least use the numbers, because one of them actually you only put in I think it's the P65001 and not the CP. But anyway, so you'll get, that's where these numbers are coming from. Oh, and the other one, of course, is if you're, Jackie and I both, we recommend you stick with using the 32-bit Unicode version of AutoHotkey, unless you have particular reasons why you're using 64-bit. And I would say do not use ANSI version of AutoHotkey, because you can just end up getting stuck for things that take you hours to realize it's just something that you should have upgraded and used the Unicode version of. Yeah. I can't hear you, Jackie.
Oh.
There you go.
I'm not saying much because, yeah, even the sound from your end is choppy on my end. So, yeah.
Maybe if you killed your video feed, it would help with the bandwidth, you think?
Yeah, maybe I can try it at least.
Maybe. I don't know. All right. So let's go ahead and get into the next one. So file read and file append. Now, this, for me, is my bread and butter. I use it easily daily. And here is a perfect example of the file read. To read in Unicode, you put in a star CP 65001 and then the file path, right? So let's go ahead and go to my file read and file append example here. So, actually, just to make it so it makes more sense, and I'm going to first start with this commented out, and we're just going to do the file append. And the other script's already exited, and where are we working out of this? The files to manipulate. Let me jump back to that folder. There it is. Okay, files to append. And so this is going to append this, and then a new line is new line, my new line text, and then a line break, right? So when I run it, I launched it, and I run it, it actually, and you know what this right here, file delete, file append example 1, let's go ahead and manually delete that just so we can see it happen. All right, so now when I run it, see, it just created this file, right? And when I pop it open, that's the file it created, and it put each of those on new lines, because I put in that new line feed after it, and then there's one at the end because I add a new line here in the return. So here's one thing to keep in mind when you're using this command, which I almost every time forget, and it's not a big deal. It just means I have to run it the second time, is don't forget when you're appending a lot of data in each row to add your line return at the end of the row. So if this is in a loop, you want it to, what I typically do will up here have like my data feed. Those are variables, and then I'll put in, what I need to remember is to add that at the end, and then down here, what I would do is when it's a variable, you'd put it in like that, right? And then that would write the contents of your data to there, and especially if line 11 here was in a loop, right, it would build that up, because this is appending each time as it passes through it, over it, and then it would build up and build up and build up, and then finally append to it. Hopefully that made sense. Now, what I wanted to demonstrate next is I'm not going to delete that file, and I'm going to rerun this. So let me save it, and let's come back here. Oh, where did I go? Now I'm going to rerun it, and now when I reload this file, notice it's in here twice. Right, that's because it literally is a file append, right? It's going to take what was there, and it's going to stack on what's beneath it, what's beneath it, what's beneath it. It doesn't care that if there's something there or not. It goes ahead, and if you put nothing, it'll actually generate a blank file. If you put no data in it, it'll generate a blank file. And so that's why the first time I ran this, if I'm writing like a header row, I want to say, hey, if there's no file, write a header row. If there's a file there, I can either rewrite the header row, or I can delete the file itself and then write the header row and go on. But what if I was scraping data from a website and had a lot of it, and my script crashed? I would want to go ahead and just keep appending. I wouldn't want to delete stuff. Of course, it would have the header at the very top. Now let's go ahead, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to leave this deleting it so we don't confuse it every time, because now I'm going to run both. So I'm going to do a file pen and then a file read in here. So let me go. Oh, sorry. And in here, I do have the UTF-8 for the encoding to save it as a UTF-8 file. And now I'm going to save it, reload it, and when I run it, let's see, it's going to dump it out to my output window here. It's going to read it in, and this is using that UTF-8 encoding. This is one of those, to me, it's a weird one, is I put star P65001 to keep it Unicode compliant. And when I read it in, so that it did both. It actually, all three things. It deleted the file, it wrote this text to my file, and then I read the file in, stored it in this variable called var, and then I dumped that into my output window.
Yeah, and of course it's good to know all of this, but to me, everything I do is actually done in Unicode, and that's the standard code page for my version of Windows and stuff like that. So it's not something I really think that much about. And here you don't have any real special characters, so you don't actually see the effects of doing it. But yeah, it's good to know, because when you work with files from, let's say, another country or something like that, it's always good to actually be aware that this is an issue.
Well, and what I've run into is people's names, especially like with the webinar stuff, right? Mm-hmm. People's names will not, they'll lose the Enyes and other Chinese characters. They get completely wiped out. And then the, what do they call it? Emojis often now, right? They're all Unicode. And so they don't come through. I saw a comment in here about saying the installer says 64-bit version is faster. I think it's possible for some things that my guess probably would never use. Maybe it's faster, right?
Yeah, on a 64-bit OS, of course it can utilize more of that business, but with a lot of the Windows applications being 32-bit still, even though we have had access to 64 bits for a long time, when working with them from AutoHotkey, it is just simpler when you call Dells and other stuff like that to be on the same bit version. So that is why we recommend the 32 version at least, because the actual speed increase you would get from the 64-bit version is negligible.
Yeah. And some libraries that are built in AutoHotkey don't have a 64-bit version, but I don't know how common that is anymore, and if it causes an issue. Most of the time, they work fine with each other. But I have run into issues, to your point, Jackie, where the program I was connecting to was 64-bit, and I wasn't trying to connect with. Now, here's the other weird thing, right? You tell AutoHotkey, install the Unicode 32-bit version. It still puts a 64-bit version on your computer. It's just not the default version. Isn't that right?
Yeah. It puts all three binaries on the computer.
Yeah.
Yeah, it picks one of them to put in the actual AutoHotkey exit version, which is the one that is being put in your registry and stuff like that to actually run AutoHotkey files. But yeah, all of the versions are there.
And I see Glenn's question on the 64-bit version, is there a Unicode version? My guess is that the 64-bit is Unicode. Is that right?
Yeah, both 32 and 64 are. Only the 32s can actually be picked as an ANSI version, yeah.
Right. Okay, so again, and then actually I have a slide at the end where we're going to talk to why you'd use one over the other at some of this file read. The next one here we got this. Actually, I don't even think, do I have an example of this one? Maybe I do. But the loop file read and file read line, right? And so this one you can loop over files and read in the files while you're doing it, or you can read a specific line from the file. And so again, we'll share all this stuff here. I'm not going to read the screen to you. There's a little bit of hints of why you pick one over the other, but let me jump to that script. This one, and honestly, I virtually never use this particular command. So loop file read, and here I'm gonna dump everything into a list view again, and we're gonna loop over files in. Oh, actually, this is okay. Sorry, I remember. This is I have this really big file. It's called full list, and it's a bunch of people with their job titles and whatnot. And so, initially, we're going to put a message box and show you this variable here, this a loop read line. That'll be the row that it's currently on as it loops over it. And I'll just, let me see. Well, I'm not going to rate over 100, but I'll just break it. So let's go ahead and start it and run. So actually, this is my header row, and the one, see the A index, right? That's in any AutoHotkey loop. A index works as your index of what iteration you're on of it. And so now we're manually going one line at a time. And what's great about it, of course, is now I can loop over this whole thing, and I already have this special variable here for, do whatever I want with that row, and then proceed on to the next time it goes through, it's the next row and the next row and the next row. Oh, actually, let me see here. Oh, maybe I do have another one after this. Oh no, it's this one. Okay, so I think it was. Well, we won't. Let me go on here. All right, so let's see let's keep that person, because what I was going to demonstrate was I'm going to comment that out. And now we're gonna import the first at 100. It's gonna stop importing them, and so we dumped that into a list view, and see how here's the first 100, right? And here's number 6, and that's what I was trying to show was, yeah. See how Connie? I'm not gonna try to say that as a business analyst. That's what we were iterating over one at a time, right? But I just very quickly. Iterated over the first 100, dumped them into a list view, and then showed them up here. And the great thing also with list views, right? You can build them where you can sort on them. You can build them where you can highlight them and double click and extract info. Like I said, maybe we'll do that for the next webinar. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jackie.
No, it's just loop read line. Yeah, that actually tells you quite a bit about what you're actually doing or what's in the variable. But yeah, you could get the contents of the line with a few of the other A variables. Is it a loop field as an example? One field would also be a line. So you have different options when actually looping over a file in this manner. But yeah.
The next one here, and this file read line. So if you happen to know the exact line you're looking for, right? And that was what here I said, go get me the 5th line of this file, and this is the one I was thinking of. So here it's Rebecca. Oops, so here's Rebecca, right? And that's what this command just went and got the 5th line of that file. But if I remember reading correctly, I think it actually still processes the other lines. I don't think it's any faster. Do you remember, Jackie?
The file read line?
It to scan and process large numbers one by one, yeah. If I remember right, I read that I think this file read line actually still, it doesn't just jump to it, is my point, right?
I do think it actually jumps to it in some manner.
Okay.
But the problem is that a lot of people have used this command inside a loop. So they've used file read line, a index variable at the end. So they've actually looped over the contents of the file, and then within the block of the loop, they've actually put this command file read line, and at the end they've used the variable a index to actually read one line at a time. instead of actually using the built-in variable to do the same thing. So that is why you actually have the strongly recommended use of the command. That is from other users actually using it in an impractical manner. That is.
Gotcha. Right. All right. Let's now the file object is amazingly cool, and I meant to try to get some time to go and do my test that I initially did a couple years ago, testing the speed of it. And hopefully you've seen our webinar using COM objects, but it's a COM object that allows you to programmatically connect to it and manipulate things. And basically you can also tell it, hey, open this file, do all this stuff to it, write multiple lines, leave it open, write multiple lines, leave it open, and then finally close it. The file append one, every time you do like a file append, it has to go read the file in, or sorry, let me rephrase that. It has to open the file, put the text there, and then close the file. And so if you're writing 20,000 lines, it's a lot more work, whereas the file object can open it once, write the 20,000 and close it, right, all at one time, or in those steps, if that makes sense.
Yeah. There's different ways of doing it. You could use a loop to build a variable holding a lot of lines and then file append once. But if you have things that are happening in between, so you would like to actually have the file kept open or writable, or you want to lock the file so others don't write to it while you're working with it, you could also use the file object. But yeah, there's a lot of options there, and of course the file object just gives you more control of how you actually work with the file. At one point, I actually used the file object to, instead of, let's say, appending to a file, you wanted to put text in the middle of the file, or you wanted to, let's say, remove something or replace something within the file open command will allow you to do this. Whereas with the file append and the file read, you would need to, let's say, read out all of the content to a variable, and then do all of your actions on that, and then either delete the old file and then append to a new file. It's just different ways of doing the same thing. Whereas,
so here, and I agree with everything Jackie just said. And the other thing is,
can you actually hear what I'm saying?
Yeah, we can. Yeah. We could. Can you hear us? I hope you can. But the and of course the file object, even though it as with anything, right? It adds a lot of options. At the same time, it makes it a little more complex. It's not as simple as the file append, but it is worth the effort. And so here I have one example here where I'm going to open a file. So this is my file. I'm going to open this file _ object example text, and I'm going to open it. And I'm going to tell it I want to open it with write privileges, and this is telling it to use the UTF-8 format. And so I first I open it and store that in F. I'm trying to remember, what is this line supposed to be here? That shouldn't be. I don't know what. I think I had borrowed that from something. Sorry. There we go. And so let me go ahead and run it. And so let me open that file object example.txt. Where? Oh, it's in the. I didn't do it in a subfolder. File object example.txt. My bad. And this, of course, will open it. Right there. Did we lose Jackie? Jackie, you there? I think we lost him. I see him there, but anyway. So the length, what I'm trying to get is it's writing it.
Yeah,
oh, I didn't. You back?
Maybe.
Hey.
Yeah.
length and then close it. So let me go ahead and let the whole thing run first. File. Oh, that's the wrong. Sorry, that's the wrong file. I'm a moron. All right. File object example. Ah, there we go. Okay. And so look, if I come in here, see this says 23, right? And I believe that's, oh, that was 26. And of course now I think the file is locked, unfortunately, because I'm switching between site in Studio. All right, I'll just stick with doing it here. So I'm going to first write Joe was here. Oh, the other thing I wanted to point out was notice in here I'm not adding line returns, right? So I write the line Joe was here. I write the line next line. I get the length of it, and then I'm going to do a loop, doing an A index, and notice again no line returns, and then the length's going to get bigger, and then it closes it. And so let me get through this here. So first is 26 and 66. And now it's done. And now when we open it in Sight, we'll see the whole file. And here it should be 63. I'm not sure why it's 63. I thought it was going to be 66. But anyway, you see what it's doing here is it's adding the line the line returns at the end of them automatically, right? And I just looped over here just showing how I can insert them. Dumped it all in there and then closed it. And make sure it's not required, but you want to make sure that you use the file close after, just to make sure it frees it up for other programs and everything. Even if you don't open this with the write-only or read-only privileges or whatever, because you can lock it. I think you can use some other codes and lock it from other programs like Excel. If Excel has a CSV file open, other programs can't read it, which is really annoying. But anyway, make sure you close it after it's done. And now let's go ahead and switch to the read file. And here we're going to read. This is the other one I wanted to point out, right? Is so when we save it, reload it, and run it. And the first thing says Joe was here, right? So this is we're on this message box. And then it's going to tell us where we are in that file. So now we're at character 16 in that file. And now notice, I call this again, and this is the thing to me that was really confusing, was it reads the next line. So in this file, it was Joe was here, and that was at 12, and then it read the next line. I called the exact same thing twice, right? This read line, I called it once. I did the tell just to let me know where I am, and then I called it again, and each time you call it, it moves on to the next row. And that's why this tell is helpful, because it'll tell you where you are in the file.
Yeah, it moves the
pointer.
What's it called? Yeah, it moves the, I can't remember. It's called a specific thing, but yeah, the pointer within the file. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was
as
one.
long as,
go ahead.
Yeah, and as long as you use, let's say, read line and write line and stuff like that, it helps you with the line breaks and stuff like that. But yeah, you can move even more freely than that.
Yeah. But this was not intuitive, and I also thought, oh, I'll put read line 10, and no, it doesn't work like that.
No. You'd need to move the file pointer first.
Yes.
To specify which line to actually read.
Yeah, and maybe
you could do that with seek.
Yes, thank you. I didn't add that here because I didn't want to add. I virtually never use it. I didn't want to have too many things in here. But go check the file object link for support. There are a couple other things like seek was what Jackie just mentioned. But by far the read line and the close and the open, right, are the things you're most often going to use. And so we were just hitting the high points. This next one I thought is a great example here. Let me get out of that, reload it. It's going to read this full list file, which is a very large file. And basically it iterates over it, and it's going to keep track of what row it's in. And then it's going to, each time it goes over it, it's storing what's in the line, in this last line. And then, of course, because it's on the very last, until it's down to the very last one, it doesn't do anything. And then the very last line, it will read it in and save it and close it. And it's going to show us, this just inserts commas into it. But let me show you how quickly. I'm going to hit my hotkey. There, and now it went over 1 million rows in my file, right? That was, what was that, like a second and a half, maybe? So it went down over 1 million rows and got the very last line of that file. And so sometimes you want to know what, I need to know what the last line was written to. And so this is a super quick, easy way to grab, even in a very large file, grab that last row of data. So this at end of file, that's another one which I didn't put in the cheat sheets. But you know what? I'll add seek and I'll add end of file to the PowerPoint deck before I share it, the contents, because I mean it's 2 minutes, right? And you might need it. Did that make sense to everybody? Hopefully. And then I think that's actually the end of the main scripts, and we're right at the hour. But here are some other, there's a file system object, there's some COM objects and a DLL call. I think, no, this is the DLL call that you can also use for looping over files, for getting content. Actually, let me see if, I think I have, I'll demonstrate the scripts real quickly instead of talking too much about them. So what number I was on? File system. Let's sort them. Windows shell. Well, all right, that was the file. We'll do the Windows shell copy move. This one, it can copy, like it's going to move. This is a large file. I thought I had a different file. Actually, I don't know if that's, I don't think that's still where it was. But I'll give it a try and see if it'll run it. It will, what's cool about it, no, is, yeah, I don't have the file there, and I'm not going to go hunt for it. But I had a different example of it. I don't think it was this one. Which one did I grab? A file system. Oh, maybe I did it in this one. So let's do this other one first here. Oh, they're all open. I'm an idiot. All right, they're open over here. I'm sorry. All right, so the WinShell copy, that was that one. That's funny. I didn't think that file was there. Let me see if I can get the path to that file real quickly. Or it doesn't really matter. Sorry guys, bear with me a second. All right. Here is a movie. Now, which script is running? I'm just going to launch it. So what I like about this one is it shows you your status bar. And I believe I can call this multiple times and it gets added to this. They keep showing up in here. And so it's a cool way that if I just want to move it, and actually right now I have it, oh yeah, I see, I updated this function to where I could put in the word copy or the word move. I don't know where I saved it, so my bad. That's why this isn't the right version of this, but I can either copy it or I can move it. And so that was a copy, and this one, if I do it again, we'll literally move it there, and it's actually, thankfully, it's going to ask me. I'm going to hit no because I don't actually want to move it. But it has that status bar, which is nice. So that was that one. The Windows file system object. All right, let me exit out of the other one. So this just went and got, it's like the other one. Like I said, we're coming up at the hour, or we're past the hour. But I'm just going to demonstrate these, and then we'll pause, and then we'll stop the recording, and then start it back up. So I'm just going to demonstrate them. But this is dumping a lot of the same thing as one of the other ones we demonstrated, but it's using a COM object, the scripting file system object. This does a similar thing, except for it's getting, let's see, is it this one? This one gets the hierarchy, I think, of the files, and this one has the other information. It's basically the same stuff. And this MGMTS, it gives you a lot of, you can point to a specific file and it will give you other information about that file. So it was just tangentially related, so I wanted to throw it in here. All right, So let me go ahead and stop recording, and then you guys. Oh, Jackie's muted. Sorry. I'll unmute you. There you go, Jackie. But I'm gonna hit this.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm gonna. Oops, I hit the wrong button. Oh well. Let me stop recording.